Yes, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may join us. This is your brother Kwame speaking, and I would like to welcome you all, Sister Ida, brother welcome, brother Ifo, and Sister Portia. We are all in different parts of the world, so that is interesting. We are going to proceed with the reading, and then after that we shall share our thinking. This is in terms of the rules, well, the rules are actually humane in the sense that we read and then we share our thinking, and it's a safe space. So we share our thinking however we want. And then, and then we hear what everyone has to say. So that's how we do it. So welcome. Sister Portia, you may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. It will be seen that this principle of identity, of meaning, is akin to Leibniz's principle of identity of meaning and to Frege's principle of identity of meaning. I have described one kind of motion which philosophers accept. They also distinguish rotary motion, which Plato illustrated with the movement of a top. There is, however, a third kind of motion, which consists in alteration, in alteration of property. There is, however, a third kind of motion which consists in alteration of property. If properties can be distinguished from relations, it can be said that there are two broad categories of motion, such that one introduces a change in relation, while the other introduces a change in property, seeing that linear as well as rotary motion involves change of relation. If there are these two kinds of motion, one resulting in a change of relation, the other in a change of property, then when it is said that matter has an original power of self-motion, neither kind is necessarily implied, nor are both together. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Sister Portia, for reading for us. I am mindful that this part of our reading, which is indeed at the very beginning of chapter 4, is highly technical. So in sharing our thinking also has to be technical. But not all of us are comfortable or familiar with these ideas already. So I think that, yes, Brother Coco, your apologies are accepted. Thank you. So I think that I should do the line by line that Sister Portia normally does for us. And then after that, we can all share our thinking. Because these are technical, it's not really my thinking. I'm sharing with you what Brother Pigbin, before I continue, can I ask, are you able to share your book so mine will be free? Brother Pigbin, are you able to do that?
No, I'm not able, Brother Kwame. My laptop has some issues, so I'm not even able to log in my laptop.
All right, no worries. Yeah, so I think that I should go through the paragraph line by line, and then I will try and share why I think Nkrumah is brought in these technical aspects. Before I continue, I'd like to welcome those I haven't welcomed yet. Brother General, Brother Piri, Brother Coco, Brother Pigbin, Brother Glenroy, and I believe Brother Sam, who is PC man. Yeah. Although brother, yeah, brother Sam, I think, has been having trouble maintaining his links, but his link is a bit unstable. So, so let's go through. I'll not necessarily go line by line, but I will try and explain the principles as far as I understand them. So there is let me start with the principle of identity of meaning. And what does it mean? So the principle of identity of meaning means that if I take any letter, like the letter A or B or C or D, whatever, it doesn't matter which. If let's take A. So if I say A is equal to B, then the two have the same meaning. So use a practical example. If I say that Kwame is a Ghanaian, and to be a Ghanaian is to be an African, then the two have the same meaning, in the sense that Kwame, being a Ghanaian on the left side of the equation, is the same as Kwame being an African on the right side of the equation. Is that clear so far? So A equals B also means that B equals A. And that is called the principle of identity of meaning. To give another example, if I am a Muslim and I'm Orthodox Muslim, and I pray by kneeling down to God, who I call Allah, and you are an Ethiopian Christian, and you also pray by kneeling down, you stand and you kneel, as the Muslims do, then Christianity and Islam have or meet the principle of identity of meaning, in the sense that if I'm praying as a Christian and you are praying as a Muslim, it doesn't matter. The two have meaning. Okay, because being an Ethiopian Christian, I pray as Muslims do, and if I am an Ethiopian Christian, I pray as the Muslims do. So there's a principle of identity of meaning. Now, then let's go to the let Okay, so let's go to the principle, Leibniz principle of identity of meaning. So again, so the first one is what Nkrumah introduces. Yeah, so Nkrumah, you will recall, introduced for us the principle of identity of meaning, the very first line. And then he says that it is like Leibniz's principle of identity of meaning. Now, Leibniz's principle of identity of meaning is the same as
I have a standing appointment. Hey, you look so
and
cool.
Frege's
I have a
also,
standing appointment every.
and also Frege's principle of identity of meaning. So what we have, so Leibniz's principle of identity of meaning is, again, as I've explained, where A equals B, it means B equals A. Frege's principle of identity of meaning also essentially the same. If A equals B, B equals A. Now, Leibniz and is it Frege or Frege? These are German names, by the way. They are mathematicians. Leibniz is the mathematician that is responsible for inventing something called calculus. And those of you who know the history, calculus was also independently discovered by Isaac Newton. So, sorry. Leibniz is French. My apologies. Leibniz is French, not German. It's Frege that is German. So Leibniz, those of you know the history, there was a fight over who discovered calculus. Isaac Newton claimed that Leibniz stole his idea, and so on and so forth. But anyway, let me not go too much into that. Let me just stay on the mathematics. So mathematically, Leibniz will say that if A equals B, then B equals A. Frege, or Frege, however I want to pronounce, will say that if 2 plus 2 equals 5, then it means 5 is equal to 2 plus, sorry, if 2 plus 2 equals 2 plus 2 plus 1 equals 5, then it means that 5 is equal to 2 plus 2 plus 1. Okay, so they have an identity of meaning. So Frege or Frege uses, in Frege's example, I've used numbers. With Leibniz, I've used letters. Okay, so why does Nkrumah introduce principle of identity of meaning and saying that what I am proposing is akin to what Leibniz and Frege have proposed? Because you recall that, as I said, that Leibniz and Frege are mathematicians. Nkrumah is a politician. He's a freedom fighter. He is an action man. So what Nkrumah is saying is that when we take action, our action has to have meaning. Now you recall, when we go to the beginning of this this chapter, it starts with practice and thought. Yeah, that practice must be guided by thought, and thought must be guided, or must guide practice. If not, then we have emptiness, and basically you don't know what you're doing. So Nkrumah is suggesting that his principle of identity of meaning, which means that the actions that we take must have meaning, is like Leibniz saying that in mathematics that A is equal to B, and Frege is saying that 2 plus 2 plus 1 is equal to 5, is the same as 5 is equal to 2 plus 2 plus 1. Now, so that is the first sentence. The second sentence then says that I have described one kind of motion which philosophers accept. Now, that motion, you recall, is what we call linear motion. Linear motion basically means that something moves in a straight line. So linear is from the word line. Something that is linear means it's in a line. So it moves in a line, basically. Yeah. Then Nkrumah says that I want to distinguish that when something moves in a line, I want to distinguish it from rotary motion. So rotary motion is when you spin, for example, the top of if you take the top of a something in the kitchen, I'm thinking of a bowl or a what is the word? If you take a saucepan or something you cook in, the lid. If you take the lid and then you turn it around, yeah. If you rotate it, you find it moves. It moves around. That was what we call it's called rotary motion, and that's what Plato illustrated with the movement of a top. So the top of anything that is flat, if you turn it around, if you apply force to it, you find it turns around, and that is called a rotary motion. Now, so rotary motion is something that turns on itself, on its axis, and linear motion is something that moves in a straight line. So far we have two types of motions, don't we? We have something that moves in a straight line and something that moves round and round and round. And Nkrumah then says that there's, however, a third kind of motion. And what is this? This motion consists in alteration of property. So, for example, if I put water on a fire and the heat is enough, that water will change property. It will become steam. And this steam, if you like, organized in a certain way, it can move a train, yeah, like the steam engine. It can be an engine that moves things. So what you have is water changing its property from being just a liquid into a gas. So Nkrumah is saying that is the third type of motion, because motion in the sense that the water, as a result of heat, the molecules begin to move, so they are in motion, and the motion keeps increasing until it gets to the boiling point, and then at some point it turns into steam. So in other words, that is a type of motion. So now we have three types of motion. We have linear motion, rotary motion, and what you would call transformation. Yeah, what we call transformation or development, if you want another word. So let me give an example using economics. So there is something called economic growth. Economic growth is when the quantity of goods in a country, goods and services, but let me just stick to goods. By goods, I mean things like oranges, bananas, things like that. If you increase the quantity of oranges, yeah, for example, what you have is that you have more and more and more, yeah. Before I explain that, let me explain something else. The two motions, the first two, which is the linear motion, rotary motion, those motions are called, if you like, they are like relations of change, yeah, because the thing that is moving doesn't change, is the same, doesn't change, but the way it relates to the other thing is changing. So that is that. The second one is a change in property. So we say it's a change in the property. So if properties can be if properties can be distinguished from relations, it can be said that there are two broad categories of motions. So I am now reading what's in front of you, such that one introduces a change in relation, while the other introduces a change in property. Yeah. So if you have just bananas increasing, that is just a change in relation. Yeah. So one banana, two bananas, three bananas, that's a change in relation. But if you turn the banana into, say, banana squash, that's a change in property, to use that example. So seeing that linear as well as rotary motion involves a change in relation, yeah? So let me go back again. So if properties can be distinguished from relations, it can be said that there are two broad categories of motion, such that one introduces a change in relation, while the other introduces a change in property. Seeing that linear as well as rotary motion involves a change of relation. So in other words, when something is moving in a straight line, or it is rotating on its own axis, it is the same thing. It does not change its property. Yeah. If you push an orange on the table and it stops in a line, the orange is still the same. It doesn't change to something else. Yeah. Again, if you take a top and you spin that top, after it comes to a halt, is still the same top. It doesn't change, basically. So there are two kinds of motion. One resulting in a change of relation, in the sense that if I put one orange here and the other one is over there, and I push one from one, or the same orange, if I push it from point A to point B, it changes its location with relation to where it started from. Yeah, so it's a change of relation. And the other is a change in property. So when it is said that matter has an original power of self-motion, neither kind is necessarily implied, nor are both together. So in other words, when we say that Kwame has the power to do things for himself, it can mean any of those three I have mentioned. Yeah, it could mean Kwame is moving a straight line. It can mean Kwame is rotating in the same place as, for example, when he's doing a secular dance, for instance. It could also mean that Kwame could be changing his property in the sense that he becomes a married man. If he marries a woman, then he's changed who he is. In other words, he's now a married man. Yeah. So when I say I can do things for myself, I can mean all three. That's what Nkrumah is saying there. So neither kind is necessarily implied, nor are both together. In other words, it could be any of those three. Okay. Now, let me use an example of economic growth and economic development. Economic growth is calculated by this. You do it like this. You say, okay, how many oranges have we produced in the country? How many people live there? So we divide a number of oranges by the number of people, and we call that economic per capita. In other words, how much there is of oranges per person in the country. Okay. Now, if you increase the number of oranges and you increase the number of people such that at the end of the day, when you divide it is the same, it means that you have a principle of identity of meaning, right? So in other words, if we do the division and there are 10 oranges per person, and then after we increase the number of oranges, the number of people, we get, for example, so 10 times 2, so you get 20, and then 1 times 2 is 2, you get 20 people, 20 oranges, 2 people. Even though the oranges has increased, so have the people. So we are still left with 10:1. So there's been a change, but the change has not really changed anything. Now, economic development is where instead of planting the oranges in, say, your backyard, the oranges we counted came from your backyard. Yeah, you have an orange tree in your house. I have one in my house, etc., etc. We all harvested them and then we counted them. However, what we'll do is we are going to plant these oranges in a plantation. And not only that, we will not harvest them by hand. We're going to be harvested by machines, supposing something like that exists. So now we have transformed the way we grow the oranges. No more in your houses. It's not going to be in a plantation. And we're going to harvest them using a machine. So we've introduced 2 things there: how the technology, how we plant it, and then the harvesting. So that is an example of development. So development is a transformation. So you used to use a typewriter, now you use a computer. That is transformation. You were a single man or single woman, you get married, you are now a married person. So you've kind of transformed yourself. Now you can have babies. Before you couldn't because you were single. Now you don't have that. You have the technology and produce children. But once you have a marriage, using marriage advisedly, of people, of course, people have children outside marriage, I understand. But the point I'm making is that unless the 2 technologies come together, the technologies required for fertilization and impregnation, unless that technology happens, you can't have a baby. That's the point I'm making. So that is me explaining the technical parts of this paragraph. Now, the time is 7:40. So let me now provide you with my thinking about the technical parts, or the technical. Yeah, let me now share my thinking on the technical part of what Nkrumah is trying to tell us, using these technical, if you like, texts. So what Nkrumah is saying is that, by this is my thinking, so feel free to challenge my thinking. What Nkrumah is saying is that when you have action and you are doing things, what you are doing must be guided by thought. And the thought that he is proposing is the principle of identity of meaning. In other words, if I take an example of 3 competing cultures on the continent: the Christian, the traditionalists, and the Muslim. Now, the Muslim lives by the Muslim culture. The Christian or Euro-Christian lives by the Euro-Christian culture. The traditional African lives by the traditional African culture. Now, is it possible that all three cultures could be doing three different things and yet the result will be the same? Is it possible that the three cultures are doing their own thing, but when you check the result, the consequence later, you find actually what the Muslim has done in terms of consequence is the same as what the Christian did, is the same as what the traditional African did. Yeah. So that's the question. Now, Nkrumah is saying that if that is possible, then what you have done there is that once the three are engaged in their practice, you are able to, if you like, analyze what they have done using if you like, a thought called the principle of identity of meaning. Right? So that is what he's saying. And this principle of identity of meaning, he's suggesting that this is what Africans have to use when they are analyzing action on the continent. So if I take an example, as an African, I say that, well, as an African, I am not a visitor. I am not a visitor. I am not a foreigner in any part of Africa because I am an African. Then say, supposing I went to South Africa and then Dudula start chasing me and attacking me, and say I have a shop and they go and they close the shop. Now, assuming that these South Africans who are doing that are not Muslims or Christians, assuming they are just acting on the basis of being traditional Africans, and assuming I am Muslim, then you can argue that the principle of identity of meaning does not hold, because for me, I am not a foreigner in South Africa, but for the South African, I am a foreigner. So there's a clash there. And because the consequences are different, because I might be killed, because the consequences are different, it means that the principle of identity of meaning does not hold. So Nkrumah is saying that when South Africans, if we apply this in the South African context, Nkrumah is saying that when you're a South African and you want to take an action, you must let that action be guided, that is a practice, must be guided by the principle of identity of meaning. Yeah. In other words, the consequence of what you do must be the same for me as it may even be for you. So if you don't want to be killed, if you don't want to be chased when you're in Ghana, if you don't want to be told go back home, then you must take action that means that at the end of the day, your action and my action have the same consequence. And this is what we call the principle of identity of meaning. And I'm using the Muslim, Christian, and traditional African example because those are the three competing cultures on the continent. You can see that also in South Africa. Ghana is the same, by the way. You recall that there was a demonstration in Ghana saying Nigerians must go home because some Igbo king apparently had bought land on Ghana land, and he having bought the land, we are told, he then wanted to want that land to be Igbo land, if you like, in Ghana. And some Ghanaians were not happy with that. But you and I know that we have Gang kings or chiefs in England. We have Ashanti or Akan kings and chiefs in England here. We have them in Germany. We have them in America. And the British are not chasing the kings that are here, are saying that you can't be here. And even if you buy land they're not going to come and chase you out because you bought land. and yet somehow it's a problem on Ghanaian soil. So I'm saying that what happened in South Africa is not different from what happened in Ghana. The South African one has been, I don't know, everybody has picked on the South African one, and somehow the Ghanaian one was not an issue. But for me, as someone whose mother is Igbo, yeah, because my mother is from Nigeria, I have a problem, because if you say that Igbo should not be in Ghana, then you are saying that you want my mother's family to leave Ghana, and that can't be right. It can't be right. So for South Africa also, they've said, well, if you are Ghanaian, you marry in South Africa, the woman must leave South Africa, come and live with you in Ghana. But that is problematic, because the consequences will not be the same for us. So the principal identity of meaning is the map that Nkrumah is asking us to use. Yeah. So philosophical consciencism is a map that we must use when we are acting. So that map is a principle of the identity of meaning. So to summarize, this is it. What is consciencism, which we've read so far? What is it about? It's saying that our goal as Africans, what we are aiming for, is reparations. Another word is restitution. Yeah, restitution. What kind of restitution? Restitution that repairs us, repairs the African. Restitution that repairs the African society, the African economy. In other words, our goal is the emancipation of the African. So at the end of the day, we want the African to be emancipated. And for us, that is the restitution of Africa. It hasn't happened yet, because most of us are busy being neo-colonial citizens. So we haven't yet woken up to the fact that we need to build a new nation called Africa. Yeah, it hasn't happened yet. Because the neo-colonial territories can never emancipate the African. South Africans, Ghanaians, Nigerians, you can call whatever neo-colonial citizen you like. No African on the continent, as long as we have these colonial borders, can be emancipated. It will not happen unless we unify the continent. And now, so if that is a goal, in order to achieve a goal, you have to have resources. So this is where we read earlier that we have to mobilize all our resources. So the mobilization of resources. So if you want to achieve something, you have to mobilize resources. And that is what we saw earlier. So the starting point is that you are a Muslim, I am a Christian, she is a traditional African. That's what we all are. We have competing philosophies, we have competing principles, and so on and so forth. You are a Christian, you believe you can only marry one wife. I'm a traditional African, I believe I can marry as many wives as I can. The Muslim believes the same, etc., etc., etc. However, our goal is the emancipation of man. So we have to move from where we are to where we want to get to. Where do we want to get? We want to get to where? The total liberation, unification, and development of Africa. That's what we want to get to. So Nkrumah is saying that between point A, your beginning and your goal, you must be guided, because there are competing and many actions on the continent. Even the presidents are all acting differently. Everybody is doing something different. The AES are doing something different. Ruto is doing something different. The king of Morocco is doing something different. If you go to Egypt, they are doing something different. If you go to Ethiopia, he's building a dam. They built a dam. Everybody is just acting anyhow they like. Nkrumah is saying that at the end of the day, all those disparate actions must be guided by one thing: the principle of identity of meaning. For what? So that at the end of the day, we attain the goal, which is the emancipation of man. So in other words, Consciencism is an action-oriented philosophy.
Thank you.
Pigeon, please, Chair. I've done enough talking.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. I think that was very useful. That was very important. So let's go straight to the membership. I think what Brother Kwame has also shared is his thinking. but at least he helps to make the text a bit simpler. But that doesn't mean you follow his thinking. So you're also free to share your thinking in the process. So let's get straight to Sister Ida. Sister Ida? Sister Ida? If Sister Ida is not there, I'll go straight to Brother Ifo. Brother Ifo?
Did you call my name?
Yes, Brother Ifo.
Hello?
I'll call your name, Brother Ifo.
Okay, sorry, yeah, I had Sister Ida, so I moved away from the computer. Okay, I'm a computer scientist, so I was by default a math major. So I think that the equation is politically correct but mathematically wrong. And I'm talking about the equation of a Ghanaian is an African, and so an African is therefore a Ghanaian. The question is, are we talking about the indigenous people, or are we talking about some of the colonizers who now have Ghanaian citizenship? Because they are not African. So I think it's
Brother
important, yeah, in that context.
I think that is a comment to the comment of Brother Kwame as an illustration, which is okay. You can come back to that. But
Yeah,
also,
okay.
maybe after that, you make comment on the text directly as well. Thank you.
Okay. But other than that, I don't have much else to add at this moment. I will come back later.
Okay, thank you. We'll allow you to come back later. Brother Kwame, you'll come to that maybe later as well, so that we can hear more people first. Sister Portia, you're next in my list. How are you,
Okay,
sister?
thank you. Yeah, I'm fine, brother. Thank you so much. I really appreciate Professor Kwame. So thank you for that. I'm going to share my thinking line by line, and then I'm going to share my additional thinking. Emphasis on my thinking, not that this is exactly what the text says. So, number one is there are three principles of life. There are three principles of living. The sentence number two, this one paragraph, is that a motion or one type of motion is widely accepted by a group of philosophers. And then sentence three, rotary motion is also another motion. It's also another motion, excuse me. The fourth sentence is then there's another motion. It's a third motion. And sentence 5 goes into that. Wait a minute, from all of this, when you talk about properties being distinguished from relations, that's when it goes into saying, well, there are even two more types of motion. And here there's a change of relationship and change of relation, and then there's a change of property. Interestingly, here it says that linear or rotary type of way, it involves, pardon me, one second. Yeah, that linear, whether it's linear or rotary type of way, that involves a relation. And I'm going to come back to that point. And then sentence 6 says, if there are these two type of motions, the ones from sentence 5, and matter has that original power of meaning, of something unique, something equal, then it's those two type of motions are not necessarily together, and then they are not necessarily implied. I didn't get what that author's saying, Dr. Nkrumah saying about implied, but I got that from that these two motions could be distinct, similar to what Professor Kwame was, going into about the different types of belief systems. So they can still be in motion, yet not necessarily together. And that is the Abrahamic, that's Islam and Christianity, and then the indigenous African belief systems is not Abrahamic religion. So I thought that was interesting. So now to my thinking, I think out of all of this, it was challenging for me. So I really appreciate Professor Kwame breaking it down, and I thank him for that. What I want to challenge Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, President Kwame Nkrumah, rest in power, is I think what that type of philosophical thinking miss, and maybe it's in this book later, is the unexplainable. That which, no matter how much of deduction someone is saying, well, this is what life is, there's something that cannot, at least in any language, be said to be that is what it is. And I call it the unexplainable. So back to the points, for example, when we look at the Mafa, where our ancestors were trafficked throughout the world, their human rights were violated, and they went all over the world. And noted there were, our ancestors traveled before the Mafa. So before the 15th century, in early centuries, our ancestors were traveling, our ancestors were multilingual and not tied to the racial capitalistic enslavement. So that one is noted. What I'm saying, that with why I bring up the Mafa in the unexplainable, and not that you have to tie unexplainable only to trauma. I just bring it up because when I think of all the horror that our ancestors, how much of our ancestors' rights were violated, Akibalanese rights were violated, and this new inhumane systems that was introduced to try to further a few people to have control of the abundance of resources, financial, natural, human, ecological resources in this world, trying to control it. What they couldn't do in these motions, they couldn't get the unexplainable. And I think, relating that to present day, I think that's where we have many windows or ceilings or many ways of getting out of these racial capitalist systems, because there today is no explanation for the unexplainable. And when we can tap into that through the traditional African ways we know, and one of those ways, in my opinion, is connecting with healthy, loving, wise, and knowledgeable ancestors. It says it is something that, even as I talk, it gives me great pause. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Portia. The unexplainable. I think that one also. When Brother Kwame come back later, maybe you'll also be able to try to talk about that more deeply. But let's then get to Sawindok. Sawindok, please go ahead.
Brother Pigeon, greetings everybody.
Yes.
Hey,
Greetings.
that text is that text is not for me. That text is not for me to think.
But as explanation from Brother Kwame a bit helped, or you feel more?
To be honest, yeah, it did a lot. It did a lot, but I need to delve a little bit deeper into the three motions: the lineal, the rotary, and the alteration of property. I really need to get myself acquainted with that because there is now the supposition that he has made that for Africa to unite, the principle of identity of meaning must be applicable to all parties or something of that nature. But let me love myself off. Let me rather just listen. Thank you. I'm being honest
After
here.
that, and Brother Kwame, no problem, Sawinda. It's understood, and I hope by more people sharing, maybe it can be lighter. I had actually told Brother Kwame when it gets to these physics things where it requires more expertise explanation. So the expert can explain the expert part, but how do we link it to the present is also very important that all of us can try and do that. But let's hear what more members still have. Sister Amma, I know you are not in a position to speak. I think you said that. If you're in a position, you just let me know so that you'll come in anytime. So let me go to Elder Sam.
Good evening. Am I audible? Pigeon?
Yes, you're audible, Elder Sam.
Brother Pigeon? Brother Pigeon?
Elder Sam, you're audible.
Okay,
You're audible.
thanks. Members, I think I'm in the same predicament with brother. Okay. Yes, I was saying I'm in the same predicament that brother say Windhoek is facing. I think this is technical language, but for me the principles I'm approaching this is based on the first lesson that Kwame gave us, where he taught us that it is theory followed by practice. What I hear here, I just want to bring it closer to my own understanding. If you look at the whole theory of motion that we have already learned, that there's nothing that is static, everything is in motion. And all those aspects, linking them up with the issue of theory, practice, theory, you will notice that anything, if you are going to sit in one spot and think that I am knowledgeable and you are not doing any movement to get more knowledge, you are not engaged in practice, you will stagnate there and never develop into any direction. And in the same vein, if you don't practice what you have learned, you will also develop in that stagnation that does not change anything. But I think Kwame says there are these three movements that we see here. And for me, my understanding, if something moves in a linear, it's a straight line. And if you move in a straight line, you are very likely not going to interact and have relationship with as many broad people in society. You will be almost like an individual who's focused on himself and his identity. And that, I think Kwame is saying, it is not going to be helpful. And the second one is being Rotary. Whatever you are doing is around that small area where you are rotating. And in that way, you are not influencing society. And the third one, where he says you need to be transformational. I think there for me, when Brother Kwame said, you'll be like a water turning into steam power. So you are not only changing and transforming, but you are even pushing. For me, that is the ideal way that we should, as revolutionaries that want to transform society, be like. We need to be people who are transforming, who are, when you are a steam, your movement is not linear, it's not rotational, it is spreading in all directions. Therefore, your influence will be more what is required to transform society. I can end up there. Thank you.
Thank you, Elder Sam. Thank you for actually
Brother
sharing your
Pigeon?
thoughts and what you think in regards
Brother
to that.
Pigbin,
Yes,
Hello?
Brother
yes,
Pigbin, is the rotary motion the most ideal for a
yes. I can hear
revolution?
you. Hello, Sawindo, do you want to
Is
come
the
in?
rotary
Please come in.
motion the no, it's just a question on account of what Brother Sam has just said. Is the rotary motion the most ideal for a revolution? It's just a
Do
question
you?
in passing. You don't need to answer. I'm just leaving it.
Yeah, we need, that's why we need to have identity of meaning. What is ideal for the revolution? And I think, as you have said, that's also part of what you have to engage in as we move along. But thank you for throwing that as we think about it, even as we share our thinking. The need for the importance for identity of meaning. What is ideal in terms of revolution? So I think that's also very important as we move along. So let me take Brother Setshaw. I'm following my list. Brother Setshaw, please come in. Once we finish this part, now we go back again now to start engaging on points that are coming up or something like that. Brother Setshaw, can you hear me? Okay, let me move. Can you hear me? Brother Setshaw? Okay. Setshawa. No, I'm reading the first name. Sechaba. Okay. Brother Sechaba. Okay, Elder Sam?
I thought I saw him had written that he will not be able to participate physically because of technicality something.
Okay. In my list, next is General Nunaki. General Nunaki? General Nunaki?
We will not participate.
Son of the League.
Yes, General.
Yeah, man. Greetings, everyone. Again and again. Okay. So basically, I'm commenting on that text, right?
Yes, you're commenting on the text.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, so basically, I heard what Elder Kwame said in his explanations. Excellent as well, and other presenters. So my thinking basically based on what I'm reading and what I've heard, is more or less my rhetoric in another form. So it says here, if there was two, I just want to focus on the last paragraph, on the last two sentences. It says, if there are these two kinds of motion, one in resulting in a change of relation, and the other in the change of property. then when it is said that matter has an original power of self-motion, neither kind is necessarily implied nor opposed together. So it's a very interesting piece of sentences in as far as philosophy is concerned. So from what I'm reading, from what I'm getting here is that so in our African history, especially concerning governance, we can see that in as much as different African clans or different African kings had established their kingdoms based on their ethnicities or their way of religion, because also we need to look at the etymologies of these words we are using on a daily basis, because religion, culture, they intertwine. So if I'm saying, for an example, my religion consists of participating in certain societies that I'm affiliated under. Let me make an example. I'm affiliated under I'll make an example about me personally, but just short so that I can emphasize my point. Let's say I'm also most part of the closer noble family. So I'm also involved in the closer nation affairs. Okay, fine. On that side, when I'm not there, I'm in the urban areas. I'm involved in the Rastafari community. So in the Rastafari community, what am I doing? Maybe I'm a secretary. And then let's go to maybe let's say I go to the Christian churches because I grew up in a Christian church. I go there to visit, let's say maybe the pastor is my brother or my cousin or a close friend or a business associate. I go to that Christian church. I do as the Christians do, give thanks to Jesus. Amen. I move. You understand? So what I'm trying to say is that we as African, especially we as the descendants of the first black people, we always had multi-characters simultaneously. You understand? So long as it continued to serve the purpose, which is the continuation of the African race. I'll make the last point before I close on to emphasize what I just said. You can be many things in one, you understand? But you cannot be, you cannot change your blood to be another thing. So which means that your blood or your family is not something that's changeable, but the society that you affiliate yourself under are interchangeable. As I just made an example that I grew up from the Xhosa clan, it's unchangeable. But I've been part of Pan-African organizations. As I made an example, I'm part of the movement, the Rastafari movement, part of here, CSG and other organizations I'm actively under, which is also my family, if you can put it on a spiritual basis. So the government system of Africa has been like that. That's why you found out that even in Africa, people are saying, no, when the white people came, we didn't have a governance. No, we had governance. It's just that our form of governance, as it was beginning to grow from the previous flood, was that one man could be a shepherd, he could be a agrarian. At the same time, when need to be for the service for the community, he would be a soldier to defend his community. Tomorrow, he's a husband in the community with his wife and children. That's just one man doing four things, four worlds. So that's just what I wanted to say on my thinking from the last two parts I heard of these two of these two things, or the power of self-motion and the fact that they are not, neither kind is necessarily implied, or nor are both together. Thank you.
Thank you, Elder. Now, Elder Anunnaki. Let's get to Sister Amma. Sister Amma?
My apologies, because I'm, as always, juggling a lot of things, but I'll give my contribution. I'm going to make an overall contribution, and this is for myself in particular. I think I find it sometimes difficult when we're focusing on just a couple of chapters. So what I think I'm going to have to, a couple of paragraphs, is to go back and reread some of what we've read before to be able to put this paragraph into a context, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes when you dissect something so small, it can, and I'm talking for myself, it can begin to lose its meaning, because you're not seeing it in the whole. So I'm saying for myself, I am actually going to, I've got the book in front of me, I'm going to read back and forth to get my head around this section. So first thing I will say, linear motion. When I think of linear motion, straight line, so you're moving in a straight line. But when I think of linear motion in a straight line, you can move forwards or backwards. So if I walk in a straight line, I can walk forward sometimes, but sometimes I can walk backwards in a straight line, as an example. When I think of rotary motion, again, rotary motion, I think of things like wheels that move, going round and round, and that they move you, and they can move you in a straight line. So the combination of the two. I also think I have this image in my head of a hamster, and I don't know whether anyone's seen that in hamster cages, they have those wheels where the hamster's running on the wheel, and the wheel's going round and round and round and round and round, and the hamster's using a lot of energy, but it's actually not getting anywhere. Maybe they're exercising, and that may have a benefit, but they're not actually getting anywhere. And then when I think of transformational motion, so transforming water to steam, and Kwame gave the example of a steam engine, which has a positive impact. But I also think, and I think with all of these, what I'm saying is that there can be developmental positive aspects, but there can also be negative aspects, because the other thing I think of in terms of steam is that steam can burn. So I'm saying that, but I'm still getting my head around, and this is someone who's read this Consciencism book more than once, years and years ago, and I'm still getting my head around what is being said in this particular bit. So I will go back and reread and listen to others, but I just wanted to share that. If you call on me again and I don't respond, it will be because I'm running up and down and round and round, but I will try and respond if you call on me, and I am listening. And thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Amma. Thank you very much. Indeed, as you're saying, sometimes when we look at this paragraph alone, based on how it is, we may forget where it's coming from. And if you have read the trend of Nkrumah, I think is moving step to step. So it comes from paragraph 1 to paragraph 2, but most of the time in his style of this writing, he tries first of all to expose and explain something in detail, then he just juxtaposes, then he arrives at a conclusion. So sometimes where we are, sometimes he's trying to still describe something, then you'll get to juxtapose that, then maybe we'll get to final conclusion. That's I've seen as his trend in all the chapters we've been doing before. But yes, thank you very much for highlighting that. It's very important if you have time at least to go back and forth. Sometimes I used to do that so that we can connect. I don't know if Elder Gleroy is able to speak. Elder Gleroy, are you in a position to speak? Or did you send a notice?
Yes. Greetings. I I'd like to, follow on from General Anaki, touching on the self-motion, because I do think that's an important part of this discussion. Without acknowledging that, I think what it says and suggests is that we need motion from outside to somehow generate movement. But with self-motion, it means that you are doing and progressing, even if it's not recognized in the same way as to how that impacts on something else. But what it does do without acknowledging self-motion is it suggests that motion needs to come from outside. It's an external requirement. There is no self-motion. And how do you identify self-motion? You measure it against others who are moving at a different pace. So I expect further chapters will perhaps go deeper in the issue of self-motion. But I think in this particular sense, we ought to have an acknowledgement that, because it just looks as if it's just tucked at the end. Then when it is said that matter has an original power of self-motion, neither kind is necessarily implied, nor are both together. It sounds like, this is there, but let's focus on the others that are recognized or scientifically acknowledged. So I wonder if when Kwame comes back, if it's not too early in the chapter to give some emphasis on self-motion. I'll leave it there, Chair.
Thank you, Elder Glenn. Thank you very much. Let's get to Lesufi. Lesufi, I think you're joining us for the first time. You might have to introduce yourself, Lesufi, and then continue to share your thinking. Lesufi Liganoshi.
Yes, thank you very much. I think I'm joining for not necessarily for the first time, but today it's even worse that I joined very late, deep into the discussion. I must say that I have been introduced to the group by Mwafrika Brother Sam, whom I come from in this Republic of South Africa, Azania. And we seem to share the ideas of Pan-Africanism from the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania. And we happened to belong to the same branch in the township of Atteridgeville. So that is my background. However, I've been struggling to follow the discussion, and I will only use my my knowledge and experience of Nkrumah, the way I think I understand him in Consciencism, and I will also relate to what I think I know and understand about these different motions that he explains. To me, both linear and rotary are the same, the way he addresses them, because they talk to relation or external engagements or external pressure. And the other type of motion, which is more arguing that matter itself can be self-propelled, can be, it can have self-motion. I think it's the entire philosophical basis of conscientism, because the way in which Nkrumah speaks of conscientism, at least to my understanding, is that there may be other relations, whether rotary or linear, that Africa has interacted with, including whether he speaks of the Arab Islamic engagements that we have had, which are external and relational in nature, whether it is through engaging the communal African history itself, or whether this Western engagement that we have, all of them, all of these three influences, they are external to us as Africans and relational. We relate with them as and when we interact with them. However, we as Africans, are we able to self-propel knowing ourselves as Africans? And therefore, how while we know that there may be Rotary or linear engagements or movements, then where do we stand as Africans? Are we able to self-propel and move forward beyond what we relate with, or we become, when I remember one of the old Africanists in South Africa, Ntate Tefu, may his soul rest in peace. He's the one who says that, you see, when you interact, or when a man and a woman meet, their offspring is neither the man nor the woman. They become themselves as an individual. They have properties of either the man or the woman. So therefore, the point I'm making is that whether we relate rotarily or in a linear direction, what is the outcome of that engagement in relation to ourselves as individuals, as Africans, and whether we have the capacity to self-propel or to change our course the way we see it. Let me not... I think I'm thinking while I am on the platform, because I have never really engaged with this text directly. I'm just thinking aloud as I joined, I think about 40 or so minutes into the engagement. Let me stop at that and hear what other fellow members in the group will say. Thanks.
Elder, thank you very much. I believe Brother Kwame, our chair, will be in concurrence with what you're saying. There's an element you're bringing.
Yes,
Brother
and
Kwame, please
also,
go ahead.
yes, and also, I want to respond to what has been discussed. Not when I say respond, I'm not responding to say the thinking is wrong or right. Yeah, I'm just sharing further thinking for you to think about what you've said. So if I start with the last thought shared, so Brother Al-Sufi celebrates the focus on self-motion. And I think that the celebration of self-motion is crucial, as also amplified by brothers Russ and Brother Glenroy. But before I proceed, I want Brother Al-Sufi to also think about this. So easy saying that if you have self-motion, you can't move in a straight line using your powers of self-motion, or that you can't move in a rotary motion. So when you have the powers of self-motion, does it mean that you can only change your properties, or can you do all three? So I'm suggesting to him that in the last sentence, it's clear that all three can be applied, or just one or two. Yeah. So and an example is the hamster example that Sister Amma gave. If the hamster is just turning round and round and round and round, yes, in terms of physical exercise, something is changing, yeah. But is the hamster's property really changing? Is there a change in the property of the hamster? Maybe not. Maybe not. So you have but however, the hamster is still using self-motion. The force or the motion, the power to change the wheel is coming from the hamster itself. So I'm suggesting that self-motion, Brother Lesufi, I'm suggesting that self-motion can also power rotary motion and can power linear motion. So that's what I am suggesting. The philosophical point, I think, is what both Brother Glenroy, Brother Lesufi, and Brother General Aras have laid emphasis on, which is that Africa does not need an external force to get Africa to act. There's nothing stopping Africans, if they want to unite tomorrow, to unite. There's nothing stopping them from outside. Yeah, and even if there is a power outside, that power cannot force Africans not to unite. If Africans want to unite, no force from outside Africa can stop Africa. So what he's saying is that philosophically, we have what it takes to unite the continent. Now, if we go to Newton, you remember in the previous paragraph, and here Sister Amma is correct, that if you haven't, shall I say, if you've read a book, but you are not, even if you are very familiar with the ideas, it's always good to go back and read, I think. Anyway, why did Nkrumah reject the Newtonian version of motion? Because it says that for something to move, there has to be a force from outside. Yeah, and so when something from outside is applied to anything, it moves. Yeah, and that motion, that movement is equal and proportional to the force that pushed it, something like that. Yeah. So Nkrumah rejected that because philosophically, what it means is that you Africans, you see, you can't do anything unless the white man does it for you. Yeah, you can't do anything. Yeah, you South Africans, for example, without the white man in your country, you can't do anything. In fact, you guys didn't contribute to anything. You didn't contribute to history. You didn't contribute to anything. In fact, maybe even you Africans, you are not humans. Yeah, you are not human. That's why you're enslaved because you are like cattle, etc., etc. What he's saying philosophically is that is a Newtonian version of motion, which is that you can't do anything unless there's an external force or power. Yeah. What Nkrumah is saying here is that is not correct. That philosophically Africans have powers of self-motion, and if you like to test yourself, get up and walk and see if you won't walk. Unless you have challenges with walking, if you get up right now and start walking, you find you can walk. You don't even need me to tell you to walk. You can walk if you want. Now, when you walk, that is self-motion, isn't it? That is self-motion. So philosophically, we have powers of self-motion, and so we reject the definition of motion in physics because it doesn't apply here. So self-motion, I think, is a key here. And in practice, meaning in everything that we're going to be doing as Africans, practice, we have to remember that the power to do it must come from ourselves. Otherwise, we'll be serving other interests without realizing it. Now, I acknowledge what Brother Ifo said, that if I am a Ghanaian and I am an African, although being African and Ghanaian applies to me and applies to all those who define themselves as Ghanaians, if you see yourself as a South African and therefore an African, you're not necessarily a Ghanaian. Why? Because of our citizenship laws. Yeah. So there's something wrong there. So in terms of illustration, I was suggesting that The way I define myself, yeah, I am a Ghanaian, I am an Ewe, I am an African, and therefore for me, all the three are the same for me, yeah. But it will not apply to Ifo, because he's not Ghanaian, he's not an Ewe, yeah. So that was an illustration. So if I imply that it applies to everybody else, then that is incorrect. And if what is our brother Ifo is saying I said, then he is correct. Now, in terms of being African, what I was saying is that the principle of meaning has to apply. The principle of the identity of meaning has to apply, which means that if a South African or an Igbo or a Yoruba also sees himself or herself as an African, and I also see myself as an African, then whatever action we take, if at the end of the day the consequences are the same, then we have a principle of identity of meaning, meaning that the consequences are the same, basically. Now, I did not, now, the unexplainable. That is, Sister Portia made that point. That is very sharp, by the way. That is a sharp observation, because Sister Portia is so spot on. The unexplainable. The unexplainable has come up in philosophy, in mathematics, in different guises. But I won't go into that. So, for example, just to mention it, there was a mathematician called Gödel, who basically showed that there was something called the unexplainable in mathematics, and so on. So, and then in philosophy, Bertrand Russell, an English philosopher, also showed that there is something unexplainable in philosophy also, or in philosophical mathematics. Now, what it means is that is dialectical. Now, if the word is dialectical, it means that you can never at any point tell the synthesis that will arise. It's hard sometimes to predict it. Some people have explained it as the principle of unintended consequences. That when you act, you can never know for sure that the consequences that you are aiming at are the consequences that will arise. In fact, it's possible that there will be consequences that you did not plan for. And that is because the world is undialectical. So, yes, there is the unexplainable, which we must always take into account. Then there is the three motions. Now, the three motions are interesting, but let me give you an analogy. You can see linear motion as the struggle for independence within your own territory. Yeah, like I think it was brother Sam, that I think Brother Sam, and also I think Brother Glenroy also mentioned motion. Yeah, so you can see the fight for independence as a linear motion. Yeah, we are fighting colonialism. You know, we are here, colonialism is there, we are fighting colonialism. Yeah, face to face, that kind of thing. Rotary motion can also be seen as the nation itself interacting within the nation. So you are going beyond your immediate family. You're not interacting with your neighborhood. You are interacting with your community. You are interacting with your region. You are interacting within your nation. And then the third property, the third motion, which is change of property, is when Africa is united, because then Africa has transformed itself from 55 separate territories, 54, some say because of Western Sahara, to one nation. And in that nation, if you are an Ewe like me, you can be in Zululand tomorrow, because we have aircrafts, we have bullet trains now on the continent.
and I can move in the. I can wake up in Everland, and then I am in Luo land in 1 hour, 2 hours, because now we have the transport system, we have the grid system, we have the agricultural systems, we have continental systems that are now in place. So in other words, we now combine all our resources, and then we find that we have transformed the continent. That is a change in property. So I'm suggesting that these three motions, linear, rotary, and change of property, actually correlate with the liberation. Rotary, remember, rotary goes round and round. That is unification. And property means you change your nature. You change who you are. You are not an African. You're not a Ghanaian. You're not a Luo, just a Luo. You're a Luo. You're not just a Kenyan or whatever. Yeah, you are now an African. So now your property has changed. So change of property correlates with development. So the liberation, unification, and the development of Africa corresponds with linear motion for liberation, unification for rotary motion, which is going round and round, unity, yeah, and development for proper change in property. So those are how I think Nkrumah meant it. You don't have to agree with me. That's what I think Nkrumah meant it. So the final thing I want to say is the question of stagnation, which Brother Sam, I think, has drawn to our attention. But I went at length with the emotions because Sir WHK wanted more on that. Now, with stagnation, which Brother Sam has drawn to our attention, I think that stagnation is very important. And stagnation, by the way, and the negative aspects of transformation, as Sister Amma mentioned, actually go side by side, because sometimes you stagnate because of the negative effects of transformation, or when there is negative effects of transformation, you stagnate. What it means is that, for example, if you take linear motion, you can fight for liberation, but you still not be liberated. Yeah, because you are in the same place that you were before you started fighting for liberation. So that is like saying that the universe is moving around you, or you are moving around the universe. Nothing has changed. You have fought for liberation, but the relations of property, the social relations, have not changed. So you are in the same place you were before you started the motion. So that is a form of stagnation. With rotary motion, yes, you have united your territory. So Kenya is united, Ghana is united, and Nigeria I don't think is united, but let's say Nigeria is united. But that unification on the national neo-colonial level has not really changed anything, because Ghana is still managing a neo-colonial economy, so is Nigeria, so is South Africa, and so on. So really, we have stagnated. Yeah. So that's another way to interpret it. Then the third one, the third stagnation is if when we transform the continent, yeah, when we form an African Union, yeah, and nothing is happening, yeah, because the presidents have turned into a club, so nothing is changed. So the African Union is a form of stagnation. It looks like a union, but it's not really a union. I'll pause there. So I've just tried to, Brother Pigbin, I've just tried to kind of tap into what everyone has said. Not to say that your thinking was wrong, but just to contribute to the thinking. Thank you. And also to make the paragraph more accessible for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. I do really appreciate your coming here as well. And I think it has helped a lot in terms of this conversation. So permit me to just take some hands that haven't spoken so that I can be able to take hands that need to come back. So Adunaki, I'll come back to you, but permit me to take we have Brother Philip, then Brother Coco. Then Nicholas Oyas join us as well. I'll have time for you. So Brother Philip, followed by Brother Coco in that order.
Hello.
Yes, Brother Philip,
Hello.
we can hear you.
Thank you very much. A lot. Um, I think that the question of moving forward in terms of African unity from the different parts of Africa, or different Africans, is necessary. There are a few challenges that we need to address, I think. I'm relating this to the question of self-motion. So we say that Africans must move. They don't have to wait for external powers. I think many Pan-Africanists agree with this. Steve Biko always comes to mind, where he excluded, as it were, white South Africans from his group. So Africans must fight for their own freedom. No one is going to do. I mean, the motion must be self-motion. The question is the identification, because we've discussed skin color a lot of the time, and the fact that what has stalled African movement is not only the external Euro-American forces, but the African traitors. So identity then becomes part of it. So we know that we cannot say that everyone who looks like an African essentially is working for African unity. And likewise, the fact that somebody is not born in Africa or doesn't have an African passport. When I say African passport, I mean whether, Nigerian, Cote d'Ivoire, African passport. Would we see someone who has a European passport, as aiding in the African process? For example, Nkrumah's secretary, I think she was an Australian resident in Britain, and during MLK, Martin Luther King's march, we find whites involved. And so the question of self-motion raises for me the question of identity, and to try to figure out who really are part of the motion. Sometimes people start off strong as part of the motion, and along the way they get corrupted. And sometimes, curiously enough, they are part of Euro-American saboteur group like the guy who ousted Lumumba, Sekou. And then somewhere along the line, it seems as though there's some sort of nationalism, of course, a corrupt nationalism and so on and so forth. But there seemed to be a curious kind of change along the line. And so self-motion, but for me, it raises a question of identity and who is really moving that identity. Are we excluding people who don't look like Black African? This has come up many times, but I thought that it involved, it requires raising again. Thank you.
Brother, because of time, let's go to Brother Coco. Brother Coco is unfortunately coming late, but please come in. I'll come to you, Sister Ida. Let me finish with Brother Coco then.
Thank you, brothers and sisters. I'm traveling today, moving from Sheffield into London for work. I'm in a noisy place, but allow me to have a go. But forgive me if you hear any noises in the background. I agree with Sister Amma that sometimes it will be important for us to refer back to what we read before, especially if whatever we are reading today is a continuation of that discussion. And the point here in the discussion is the self-motion. Self-motion was discussed, I think, 2 weeks ago. So that's important. It's a matter of going back there and rereading that, so to understand what it is you are trying to say. Because Dr. Nkrumah was arguing that matter has those characteristics of self-motion. I think Professor Kwame has covered a lot of things today already, but let me just try to rehash some of them, so those of us who don't understand what is happening here can be able to clarify. Not that I have better understanding than Brother Kwame, but here we have two thinkers, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, as well as Gottlieb Frege. And the two of them, one of them, Leibniz, is famous for identity of indiscernibles. And what his assertion is that if two things have exactly the same properties, they are really the same thing. That is his bottom line. Whereas Frege says, sense, the way something is presented, and reference, the actual thing referred to. So in this case, let's take an example, morning star. In morning, we are referring to a morning, right? But it's the same star. And then when we say evening star, you could think that it's a different thing, but it's actually the same thing, right? It's one and the same thing. And in this case, it's Venus. For those of us who have done cosmic science, understand that Venus, you see it, is the morning star, and then you see it in the evening, is an evening star, but it's the same star. So what Dr. Nkrumah here is saying is philosophical concepts must be judged by their underlying meaning and the relation to reality, not merely by wording. So let's not be confused by wording. Wording on its own is not enough to get us confused. So talking about the three kinds of motion, again, we talked about a linear motion here. I will just give you an example. It's a ball rolling across the floor. It goes in a straight line, right? Or a planet orbiting is a straight line. And with rotary motion, this one, it turns around an axis. So here we have an example of an F spinning around an axis, or a wheel rotating. The wheel rotates around an axis. It's just a spatial or mechanical kind of movement again. But with regards to the third one, is an alteration of property or transformation, as Brother Kwame has said. And here, from Dr. Nkrumah, that kind of motion consists of alteration of property. It means here that we are changing quality, okay? It's a change in quality this time. It's not just a change in quantity or motion, there's a change in quality. Transformation is involved, or development. So here, the examples which are there for all of us, which you can see, is water. Water changes different forms. It can freeze, it can be a gas, it can be different things. Another one is iron. Iron can rust. That it changes, it transforms from being an iron. Or a seed. A seed changes from just being a seed, it becomes a tree once we have planted it in the ground. Or the society can change politically. So I guess for our case, that's relevant because we change to a revolution. So the revolution changes or transforms the society from what it was before into a new society through a revolution. So why is he telling us all of this? There are times when I thought to myself, why is Dr. Nkrumah using such complex language to communicate what it is that he wants to tell us? But think about it again. What did he say before? He said, you need the social revolution. But that social revolution has to be grounded in intellectual revolution. So he is not going to put everything that he's telling us in the book without coding it in such a way that we need our own intellectual revolutions to interpret it for us as Africans, to understand exactly what he's saying, using our materials as Africans, our lived experiences as Africans. So, in short, he is critiquing Newton here. We know what Newton was saying. Newton, he has a first law of motion. But what that first law of motion says is that a body remains at rest or in uniform motion unless acted upon by external force. So as you can see, this is in contradiction to what Dr. Nkrumah said with self-motion. So basically, we can interpret this critically to say matter does not originate change from within itself according to Newton. But according to Dr. Nkrumah, it does that. There's that self-motion. And motion must be externally caused. That's what Newton says. But Dr. Nkrumah says, inertia itself, that inertia is matter actually resisting external force. Okay? So here is an African that we know. Whoever the colonizers were or the external forces were, they came in, they wanted to change it, but the Africans had their own way of doing things. And if they think it or they feel it within themselves, they will know they have within themselves what they want. So what we are living now as Africans, we are living in a situation where our own development has been interrupted. So if we go back there and rediscover who we are, then we are able to continue our own development with taking whatever else comes from outside. But we cannot depend largely on what comes from outside. It will be who we are, what we want, and how we want to change things, and with a little bit of modification from Christianity or from Islam to go back. I mean, to move forward in terms of progress, because we cannot exclude all the developments that are happening today. So I think let me leave it there, but happy to be engaged.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Coco. Brother Yo, you're new to the class, so Brother Yo, I know you will come earlier next time. Brother Yo is a fellow comrade from Kenya, leading one of the revolutionary movement in Kenya called the Free Kenya Movement. Brother Yo, please just even say hi to the group, then maybe you can come in next time. Brother Yo, if Yo is not able, then Shasha did not speak. I still only have 3 minutes. I haven't spoken yet. But
Brother Pigeon, please share your thinking.
Brother Kwame,
yeah, share your
very
thinking.
Interesting.
Thank you.
And I'm liking to chair because I learn a lot by chairing. You hear very. But let me just go straight to. I will put it in African context. Identity of meaning. What I'll say briefly is, do we Africans have a common identity of meaning of what a liberated Africa will look like, a united Africa will look like, or a developed Africa will look like? I know we are in contradiction here, or whether you want United States, United Nations, whatever. We're in contradiction here. The AU thinks that it should not be Africa Liberation Day, it's Africa Day. People, some think that it's already independent gained, other think we have not gained independent. That identity of meaning, I think, is a very important thing that we need to establish as a people, because then we will be united in meaning. And I think there's very important need for us to arrive at that identity of meaning. Now, the next thing I'll be talking about, I'll not be focusing much on the motions and the categories of the motions, but the context of motion. Is motion, as you've said, is it a change in position or a change in the property? The African continent, for example, has changed leadership from independence, but has much been gained in terms of the welfare of the people of Africa. And I think that's very important for us also to ask ourselves. And lastly, I know the element of self-motion that has been insisted all along. And I think I'll not emphasize further that it's important that we understand that element of self-motion and know that that is possible. And I think is a message Nkrumah is pushing towards. Must appreciate and understand that there's ability of self-motion. That will be my thinking for today. Brother Kwame?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And to add to what Brother Koko has eloquently shared, the intellectual revolution, the heart or the content of the intellectual revolution is a principle of identity of meaning that he's proposing here. That is the intellectual revolution. The social revolution, I think Brother Koko has mentioned it, I've also mentioned it, which is that from colonial territories, we become independent territories, then we unite Africa. And as Brother Sam has reminded us, using his analogy, we've stagnated as a continent, and yet we have powers of self-motion. So I would suggest that we pause here and continue next week. I understand, yes, that we will need to go back sometimes to read what we read before. I think something we do from time to time. And so thank you for reminding us. Let Brother Pigbin now make the announcements so that we can have a good morning, a good evening, good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone who has joined us today. Those who came late, those who came earlier, those who came for the first time, you're most welcome. This is what you've been doing. If it's interesting or hard or technical, this is what you've been doing every Thursday for the last almost 4 years now. So you can imagine the number of times we've been engaging in this conversation. And every time there's a new thing to learn. So feel most welcome in the next session. Join us for still a more weeks, more months, more years probably ahead in our studies of Consciencism. It's when we are in chapter 4, and we will be moving to chapter 5, the last chapter. So this is the second last chapter. So please feel free to join us and engage with us. There's a topic coming up on the economic warfare against Africa. I had requested that anybody interested to present on that topic this Saturday, please feel free to come in. Brother Kwame, I think the armed struggle will be linked to, is it to the Africa Liberation Day? Because I remember we were silent a bit on the Africa Liberation Day, but I think that topic will be fitting well to the Africa Liberation Day on the week of 23rd May. And then on 16th, we have the food security. That's the next week after this Saturday. So those are the topics ahead. And the last topic will be on policing, intelligence, and continental order. So if you wish to do a presentation this 9th May, please get in touch. And if you wish to do a presentation in any days based on the topics ahead, please also get in touch so that you can prepare in advance. I've seen, Sister Portia, what you proposed to present. Please feel free to start preparing your presentation in line with that, and let any member who wish to present, please to come in. Now, having said that, we continue our Monday Pan-African Book Reading Club. We did not take place last time on the review of Dr. George Aiti's book. And next Thursday, we continue with the paragraph after the paragraph we read today. In fact, I was thinking that we could cover those two paragraphs. I didn't know how huge it was for that one paragraph. And because it was technical, I couldn't understand it. So move on to the next after this paragraph we read today, coming Thursday. The recordings are already available on the YouTube channel, but for last week, but I will also share them on the WhatsApp group so that you can circulate them fully. But our recordings of the sessions for last week are available. There's a recording that I think will clear up very soon with Brother Kwame so that we can as well. And our Pan-African Book Reading Club, under the leadership of Sister Amma is also growing on well. If you need any material for Pan-African or content, please feel free to get in touch with all of us. That said, Brother Kwame, that's it for now. Back to you.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop the recording. And yeah,